Good morning, everyone. And on behalf of the Gojo team, welcome to the Gojo Symposium. My name is Megan DeGiorgio. I'm an infection preventionist and clinical manager at Gojo. We're so glad that you're here with us today. And my team, we're always really inspired by the dedication and passion of our guests who wake up early. Some of you were here at 5:15. I wasn't even here at 5:15, so thank you. And as we all work together to advance the science of hand hygiene, we're very grateful that you are here with us today. Last year, we asked the symposium attendees what topics they wanted to learn about. And behavior change was top at the list. As infection preventionists, we're charged with improving hand hygiene, yet we really have no authority or responsibility for those on the front lines of care. Today, we hope to present you with a fundamental change in approach. Our speakers will discuss why building partnerships is key to accomplishing change. Our first speaker, Dr. Jeffrey Ford, is a professor emeritus of management in the Department of Management and Human Resources at the Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University. Prior to joining Ohio State, he served on the faculties at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and Indiana University. His research focuses on the leadership and management of change, resistance to change, and the role of productive conversations in the implementation and accomplishment of change. His articles on organization change have appeared in numerous journals, including the Academy of Management Review, the Journal of Organizational Change Management, and Harvard Business Review. He is the co-author, along with his wife Lori, of the 4 Conversations, Daily Communication That Gets Results. During his presentation today, Dr. Ford will identify 4 key conversations that generate engagement, reduce resistance, and lead to successful change. Peggy Zemansky is the patient care manager in the surgical intensive care unit at the University of Chicago Medicine Hospital. She previously served as nurse leader at Parkland Hospital in their surgical trauma intensive care unit, and she also serves as a nursing legal consultant. Peggy's focus in leadership has been employee engagement and staff ownership, which has improved quality outcomes. Peggy recently received the Employee Engagement Excellence Award, and her surgical intensive care unit was awarded the Silver Beacon Award for Excellence in Nursing Care. She's published chapters in nursing textbooks and has presented on employee engagement and other hand hygiene topics. During her presentation, Peggy will illustrate the value in infection prevention working through nurse managers for the accomplishment of change. When her hospital installed an electronic hand hygiene compliance monitoring system, house-wide, Peggy had the challenging task of getting her staff to buy in to the initiative, to own their hand hygiene performance, and ultimately change the culture of their unit. And she will share her 4-year journey with us today. At this time, I would like to invite Professor Ford to the podium.
Good morning. So for those of you who don't know, Professor Emeritus means that I don't have any classroom responsibilities, I don't have any faculty meetings, I can do pretty much what I want, and I get season football tickets. It's really an honor and a privilege to speak with you this morning. I know the work that you do. This is my first introduction to the work that you do, and I know that it's important, and that I'd like to share with you some things that I think will support you in accomplishing the work that you do. As you already know, change requires that people act and behave differently than they're currently behaving. It's reasonable, therefore, that we would expect the way to bring about change is to focus on their behavior first. What if changing behavior is not the thing you should be focusing on? What if changing behavior is a consequence of what you're trying to accomplish rather than the source of what you want to accomplish? You've all heard the adage that it takes a village to raise a child. I'd like you to consider a similar idea required for producing change. What it means to take a village is that the villagers have to partner up with each other, that they have to work together, they have to work cooperatively, and in a very real sense, raise that child along with the parents. In a similar manner, it takes a village to raise or to produce a change in an organization. Change results because people interact differently in an accomplishment of change. So it's the interaction between people that becomes important, not necessarily what each individual themselves does. A partner is a person who takes part in an undertaking with one or more people in an endeavor to accomplish a particular outcome. They share the risks and the rewards. They form a partnership in that each shares in the success and in the failure. It's not my failure, it's not my success, it's not your failure, it's not your success, it's our success. When you hear Peggy talk, she's going to talk about ownership, and one of the things that's characteristic of is a partnership. There are four different partnerships that are available in the conduct of change. The first one is the partnership between the principals, the leaders, the managers of particular units that are undergoing change, and change recipients, the people who actually have to do the change. The second partnership is between the change agents and the principals. Now, in some cases, such as Peggy, the change agent is the principal, in which case we have a different dynamic. But in your case, you're not the principal. You have to work with principals and you have to work with change recipients. That's the one we're going to focus on today. The third partnership is between change agents and change recipients. And then the fourth one is the relationship among all three, which is the ideal kind of situation. The reality is in organizations that some of these partnerships are strong and some of these partnerships are very weak. What makes it particularly difficult for you is if the relationship between the principal and the change recipients is weak, it compounds your problems. Now, what does change typically mean? What it typically means for people is I want you to do something differently than you're doing. What I'm doing is fine, what you're doing is not. In their world, what you want is an interruption. This is not really a partnership. This is more like a dictatorship where you're supposed to do what I want you to do. I've learned over the 40-some years that we've been doing this kind of work that most people do not think they need to change so much as the people around them need to change. Principals think recipients need to change, and recipients think the principals need to change. There is very little we in current approaches to change. Typically, people want to know, as soon as you bring up a change, what for or why? What's wrong with what I'm doing? People generally take an orientation that's kind of reflected in this cartoon. We tend to think that that we're eagles and other people are the turkeys. It's where I know you should. It's a situation where I know what you should be doing. If you would just listen to me and do what I am saying you need to do to accomplish this thing I think you need to accomplish. Change implies that something's wrong, or that what I'm doing is wrong in some way, where that something is not what it should be, or it's not the way that it shouldn't be. Why else would you want me to change? Because if it's already successful and already works, why would I have to do anything differently? In this regard, changes are seen as critical of something I am or am not doing. And therefore, I have to be fixed or repaired in some fundamental way, which means I'm working on what has been as compared to what could be. I don't know about you, but as soon as someone suggests, particularly if it's my wife, or even hints that I may be doing something wrong, I become defensive and begin justifying and explaining my actions. It's no surprise, therefore, that the overwhelming majority of changes undertaken in organizations at all levels, from the individual all the way to corporate level, fail. It's not that they don't produce any results at all, it's that they fail to produce the results that people intended them to produce when they started. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. This particular statistic has held up for decades, but we've learned that it doesn't have to be that way. Unfortunately, the way we generally approach change sort of persists this kind of result. So I'm going to talk to you about some ways of gaining access as a change agent with regard to primarily principals, but it also has an impact on change recipients. Our research over the last 30 years has shown that there are 4 types of what we consider to be productive conversations that are involved in the implementation of change, what we call initiative, understanding, performance, and closure. Although the specific subject matter may change, college professors, business professors talk differently than you all. The conversations that we use to accomplish what we want to accomplish are nevertheless the same. We're currently in one of those conversations, and that conversation is a conversation for understanding. I'm going to present these conversations in a sequence, but you should know that in the real world, they don't occur in this order. They occur as they occur, and they have to be used when it's appropriate. So what do I mean by these different conversations? If you're going to initiate a change, you're going to start with what's referred to as an initiative conversation. This is a conversation for what could be. What is it that's possible that we could accomplish? It's a conversation for creating and proposing a future as compared to fixing a particular problem. Initiative conversations speak for a future that people are interested in and committing to change. These are conversations that focus on what you want or what the change is for, the time frame and what you want in the time frame in which you'd like to accomplish it, and the rationale or the reasoning behind it. The purpose is to create a future, and it's to create the future now that we can begin working on together now. Which of the 2 futures would you like? These are both the same future. They both produce the same result. Which one do you find more attractive? How many of you prefer treatment A? So how you speak of future matters. Initiative conversations are organized toward what it is we want to accomplish as compared to what we want to stop or what we want to prevent. I was watching the other day a show on Mr. Rogers, and they went through the methodology he used for how to talk to for preschool children, how to change an idea that was negative into a positive kind of thing. I thought he should make that available for all of us. There's a study done by a man named Alan Deutschman that was published in Fast Company, and he also has a book out. Most people believe that they were confronted with a life or death situation, and they had to change in order to stay alive, that they would. He did a report on people who had triple bypass surgery, in which they were told that if they did not change their behavior, they would again endure a painful and possibly a premature death. How many people do you think changed? None. The odds are 9 to 1. The scientifically looked at are 9 to 1 that even in the face of death, people will not change their behavior. It was not until they started talking about what would be available, like a future, the quality of life and the things that they could enjoy if they would change their behavior, that they actually did. So focusing on fixing something doesn't work as good as focusing on building something. Understanding conversations, like what we're beginning now, are the conversations in which we involve people and engage people. These are the conversations that we have most of the time in organizations and around change, because we're trying to get people to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're going to do it, on the belief that if they understand all that stuff, something's going to happen. In change, there are always 2 points of view. This is a source of difficulty and resistance. There's the change agent, and there's the change recipient. They don't see the same things the same way. My good idea is not necessarily your good idea. This is where people will tell you things like, well, but I didn't touch anything. The dispensers were empty, or there were no dispensers. I was carrying supplies, and I had nowhere to set them near the dispenser. I forgot. It was an emergency. Yeah, but I wear gloves. As a change agent, that all sounds like an excuse, a justification, a way of rationalizing not following the change, rather than that's actually a report on the world in which the person lives, is telling you how it is. Which creates this trap we have, the trap of understanding. What do I mean by a trap of understanding? Well, let's have Dilbert explain it to us. Did you ask the lab if they have a way to test traffic loads on our prototype? I met with them for an hour and explaining what we need that we need traffic load tests. But you didn't actually ask if they could do the tests. Well, no, but it's their job to do the tests, and they would have mentioned it if they didn't have a way to do it. But you didn't ask. That was the context of the meeting. If they couldn't do that sort of thing, that test, they would have mentioned it sometime during our hour together. Maybe you should ask. Okay, I'll ask. Are you freaking kidding me? I wonder why you didn't ask. How many of you, well, I'll do it this way. The trap of understanding. The trap of understanding is the belief that when people understand or know something, they will act appropriately based on that understanding or knowledge. Change is both emotional and factual. Emotions generally win. Facts do not convince. Understanding may be necessary for action, but it's not the source of action. How many of you in here would like to be in better physical condition or healthier than you are now? Raise your hands. Now, if you have absolutely no idea how to do that, put your hand down. That tells you something about the power of understanding. It's not that people don't need knowledge in order to do things. It's just not the source of action. Mark Twain once said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." I'd like you to consider that we're trapped in this particular problem, that we operate this way with regard to change, and as a result, we end up with insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. In the area of organization change, the trap of understanding is pervasive. It leads to unfounded expectations and the belief that something's going to happen. In order to make anything happen, if you really want people to do anything, you need a different type of conversation. It's what we call a performance conversation. It's the only conversation that actually commits people to action. It doesn't guarantee they'll act. It just commits them to action and gives the foundation for management. Performance conversations involve making an agreement with people, and they have a particular structure to them. This is sort of the canonical form. Obviously, it can be done in a different sequence. But I'm requesting that you, A, whatever it is I want you to do, whatever I'd like you to provide, by a particular due date, and then why I want you to do that, or what it contributes to, or what difference it makes. So it answers the questions, what you want, when you want it done, and why you would like it accomplished, in a context in which it's of value to them. The last set of conversations, and the key to actually managing a change and implementing a change successfully without authority, without position, is through closure conversations. Closure conversations are conversations that complete the past. They don't dwell on the past. They don't in any way criminalize the past. They simply acknowledge it, address what's happened, and then move forward. These are very, very powerful conversations, and they're among the least used in organizations, particularly in the area of organization change. They create accomplishment, they generate satisfaction, and they build accountability. This is a place where if I'm looking to develop a relationship with you, I'm going to be using these two conversations. I'm going to use all four conversations, but if I'm a change agent, one of the things I'm going to be wanting to do is have you make promises to me, which I'm now going to manage. I can manage an agreement independent of my location, and I can manage an agreement independent of my authority. But in order to have it actually work, I need to have some way to create closure, which means I need to be able to manage or keep track of what's going on. The most powerful thing you have available to you is actually making requests and following up on those requests in a reliable and consistent way through closure conversations. So there are four, what we call the 4 A's of a closure conversation. Acknowledge what's happened. We had an agreement. You said you would do this by this time. You didn't do that. I said I would get this accomplished by this time. I didn't do that. Appreciate. I want to thank you for the work that you did on this. It was completely out of the ordinary, and it was completely inappropriate. Completely appropriate. Completely appropriate that we be able to get that accomplished. Apologize. One of the things I learned as a college professor is that faculty frequently never said they don't know or would apologize for something in front of their students. I learned it's very easy to apologize and very effective. Amend. What you amend are agreements. Can you remake the agreement? Can we recommit to something? Not out of a you didn't do it, I didn't do it, but out of we didn't get this accomplished kind of position. All four of those, a closure conversation always involves one or more of those conversations. So, in closing on this, I want you to consider that all partnerships in change, regardless of positions of authority, responsibility, are built and maintained through the conversations you have with other people. When you listen to Peggy, I'm going to invite you to consider that what she's explaining to you is a fundamental success resulting from her ability to significantly shift the nature of the conversations and what people talk about in a unit. So she has an advantage of being in a position of authority, but as consultants, my wife and I never had any authority, but had lots of responsibility for supporting and having changes actually occur. So now you have the background theory. Peggy's going to give you the truth.